Good morning and welcome to the Policy and Strategy Committee meeting. It is Tuesday, July 15th, and I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the traditional territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We do have regrets this morning from Mayor McLean-Weil, Councillor Brooks, and Councillor DeLong. Is there any announcements, acknowledgements, or recognitions? Seeing that none, we'll continue along in our agenda and move down to public input. Public input is one of several opportunities for the public to engage with council. Residents are welcome to use the public input portion of the meeting to share their thoughts with the council on municipal topics that are important to them. We ask that all statements be respectful of other members of the public, staff, and council. We ask that when you come to the podium, you state your name and address. Actually, your community, please. If you have a question or concern that you would like to have answered, then we ask that you also provide your email address so that we may contact you regarding your question or comment. The chair will respond to questions that can easily be answered. It is at the discretion of the chair to make that determination. If your question or concern cannot be answered by the chair, then it will be handled as follows. We will email you with an answer to your question or a response to your concern. We may also contact you to get additional information or further clarification on the matter to assist us in responding. We will provide a summary of answers and responses at a future council meeting under business arising from the minutes, and this will form part of the public record. In this way, we will provide the answers or responses to not only the resident that brought them forward, but to all residents of MODL. The resident that asked the question or brought forward the concern will be advised when their matter is being addressed at council. Statements, questions related to personnel or operations can be emailed to the Chief Administration Officer, Tom McEwen. There are 15 minutes allocated for public input today, which are shared between the speakers. If you would like to speak at public input today, please raise your hand. Yeah, so we have one person for public input, so if you would like to come forward, you're welcome to do so at this time.
Morning, everyone. I'm Andrew Himmelman from Newcomville, and today I want to talk a little bit about science. Not political science. I want to start with, I'm not a climate change denier, but I do deny the fact that you can tax the population to make a change on the weather or Mother Nature herself. Scientists have proven from glacier samples that it's cooler today than 11,000 years ago. Holocene epoch, if you want to look it up. The oldest human skeleton found is over 300,000 years old. Over that time frame, the Earth has gone through dozens, if not hundreds, of heating and cooling cycles. The most prominent and latest were the meltwater 1A, B, and C events between 11,000 and 9,000 years ago. During meltwater 1A, which was about 14,600 years ago, the ocean rose 10 to 20 meters in height in just 500 years. Did the population back then use taxes to fight this climate change? Scientists believe at one point the complete surface of the Earth was covered in ice. When major melting started during the meltwater events, the ocean rose approximately 125 meters. From scientific estimates and from ice coring samples. Could a tax dollar stopped the ocean rise 11,000 years ago? And more importantly, how many cars and industrial pollution was back then to cause this global warming? Why do politicians believe that adding carbon taxes and spending our tax collected funds will change anything? There is no science to prove that you will ever stop Mother Nature's course and change the planet. Today, our planet does not have the ice coverage required to melt currently in order for the ocean to rise as Modal's coastal planning data predicts or suggests of 3.98 meters. So how did Modal get here today? April 9th of 2019, Modal had a local gentleman do a presentation that was signed off by staff member Jeff Merle in front of council. This presentation was done by George Bernay, hopefully I pronounced that right, who identified himself as the head of a local climate extinction rebellion. From Modal's historic agenda and minutes, he presented some slides and video on how the world was going to eventually burn and flood. Extinction Rebellion since then, unfortunately for them, was at one point identified by the UK Counterterrorism Agency as an eco-terrorist group. With current political pressure, the current Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, had the agency remove that title. Between April 2019 and March 2023, that organization had 4,465 arrests, and they were all identified to be part of Extinction Rebellion. Their group is funded partially by the CEF, or Climate Emergency Fund, which was also started in 2019 by Rory Kennedy, JFK's youngest daughter. This group is based out of California and uses nonviolent tactics to get arrested and make headlines to gain attention. They use Martin Luther King's civil rights movement as evidence that mass disruption can make a change to better the planet and make governments spend more money on green initiatives. So Modal's been told by an NGO from California that we needed to declare a climate emergency and how we here should create policy. So most of you were not here sitting back in 2019 when this presentation took place. And who could have known what this newly formed nonprofit out of California could have become? I do not believe the implications of jumping on the bandwagon of this climate emergency was fully recognized or even considered by council at that time. What studies did Modal do in 2019 on how much this was going to cost our little municipality? What has this actually cost us financially since that declaration? And even more so, what has Modal's 2030 climate plan actually done for its residents to date? The biggest elephant in the room that no one is asking or talking about is natural carbon storage, or the sequestration of CO2, or carbon emissions. It's not included in any federal data, provincial data, or any of the municipal data. Are we not the Christmas tree capital of the world? In 1996, were we not the forestry capital of the world? What about all these trees that we're surrounded by? The elephant in the room is natural carbon storage, also known as carbon sequestration. It refers to the process where carbon dioxide, or CO2, is removed from the atmosphere and stored in natural reservoirs like forests, oceans, and soil. This process is crucial for mitigating climate change by reducing the amount of greenhouse gases in our atmosphere. So, carbon storage is the process of capturing and storing CO2 to prevent it from entering the atmosphere. There's a natural way of doing this, and then there's an engineered method of storage, which they pull CO2 out of the air and force it underground in a storage system, locking it away in the soil. I want to talk about the natural storage process and what we have locally here in Modal. The WWF, or the World Wildlife Foundation, which most of you would recognize as the panda bear logo, has done a recent carbon storage map of Canada. It was published in 2022, and it has every square meter of Canada calculated out and how much carbon storage our lovely country can sequester. I'm not a scientist by any means, but I can read, write, and understand proficiently. Carbon storage in Canada is calculated to 327 billion tons of storage capacity in our forests and wetlands. About 6% of Canada's carbon is stored in vegetation, trees, shrubs, grasses, dead leaves, and roots. The remaining 94% is found in the top 1 meter of soil, with 32% of this soil carbon found in peatlands. The WWF published online this little mapping tool, and in its basic form, it does 10-kilometer polygon sectors across Canada. and it shows how much natural carbon storage is actually in that polygon. So I took my time and went through and actually calculated out what is in the municipality of Lunenburg. The data sets are on there. You got to look at your longitude and latitude for the center points, and then you can estimate out what polygons are actually in this municipality. So Maiders Cove, Indian Path, Petite, Lake Center, Dayspring, Colpton, Newburn, Farmington, all of these spots are in there. The largest area of natural carbon storage, the center point, is actually the Mark in Dayspring. So Modal's 2030 plan has a set baseline of all CO2 emissions municipality-wide, that's houses, cars, industry, and everything, calculated out to 314,000 tons of CO2 equivalent. When I went through and I added up all of these polygons, a very conservative estimate is 60 million tons of carbon storage. So reduced down, you've got 60 million tons of carbon storage, and this is what we produce in the municipality. Our goal, by spending millions of dollars, is to reduce it by 100,000, that much, by spending millions of dollars in order to do it. If I had the tools to overlay it properly, I'm sure it's probably about 10 to 15 million tons above that 60 million number. I was very conservative with around the borders on the mapping tool. It is a 10 kilometers polygon, so there's about 10 to 15 million that I didn't include in there. Modal's baseline is less than 0.5% of our natural surroundings capacity of carbon storage and sequestration. Less than 0.5%. Now, scientists say that it could be 1 to 1, or it could even be up to 1 to 3. So it could be 60 million, it could be 120, it could be 180 million tons of CO2 that our environment around here could sequester. Like I said, I'm not a scientist, I'm just going by what the data is showing. Now, the interesting part is this 10-kilometer polygon area around the Mark will of course change. Because as of the other week, I believe in an in-camera session, about 13 acres of that beautiful carbon sequestering woodland was sold off to the municipal group, about 3.4 kilometers from the center point. It's amazing how this facility spends millions of dollars on climate change initiatives, and then with a stroke of the pen, will vote and destroy 13 acres of the most important part of the land in our municipality that sequesters carbon. We have full-time climate change employees drawing out.
Point of order. Is it appropriate for someone in public input to talk about what was in camera and to have that put on the record? I'd like some advice. Thank you.
I believe the reference is to the decision that was made coming out of camera.
Yeah, I'm a taxpayer.
Okay, sorry. Can you clarify what the what that decision was? Thank you.
Because I don't think, it's just to the, whatever would have come out in cameras, so I would suggest that you finish your public input session, and then
Thank you.
we'll go from there.
So we have full-time climate change employees drawing out how much money yearly, and no warnings of this? Do they deny the fact carbon sequestration is real? Modal's Climate 2030 program, in my opinion, is a farce. I strongly believe I'm standing in front of people here today that truly care. I know you guys, or I know you care about the environment. I know you all care about our community. That's why you're sitting here. I just want you to realize that you've been sold a bill of goods that is a lie. I believe what is taking place on a global scale is a lie for profits. The FCM and ICLEI has programmed the governments of this country and all around the world, including this facility. Modal has to raise taxes every year to spend more and more money on green energy programs that we do not need. It's irresponsible, and this place needs to be deprogrammed. I ask today that a motion is made to exit ICLEI and PCP programs. We are the Christmas tree and forestry capital of the world, and we are already net zero, and by a long shot. Our municipality was formed by settlers, mostly farmers, people who cared about passing tradition and knowledge down year after year. What pollution that is created from today's modernity is quickly recycled by our surroundings. I call for stop wasting the taxpayers' money and stop by selling pieces of forested land and start making the municipality an affordable place to live by scrapping these future green initiatives. Here in a few minutes, I'm sure you're going to hear about a big, beautiful green solar project that's going to cost $5, $10, $15 million, which is going to be subsidized by federal green money. That's still taxpayers' money that's being wasted.
I just want to let you know you have about 1 minute left.
Yep, thank you. So goals of today and what questions I have, what I'd like to be answered publicly. How much to date has been spent and budgeted on green projects since 2019? This would include the Tesla chargers over at the LCLC, all the upgrades around out back, hundreds of thousands spent on full EV vehicles, and all the solar projects that have been put in. Did Modal fact check Extinction Rebellion back in 2019? Did Modal do a prediction or cost analysis on what this climate emergency was going to cost ratepayers over the next decade? Did Modal include any of the local carbon storage capacity in its 2030 climate plan? Motions I'd like the council to bring forward in the future. Modal to exit PCP and ICLEI memberships. Modal to look at subsidizing our farmers and woodlot owners on their property taxes based on some sort of carbon sequestration reimbursement schedule that our climate employees can figure out. Modal to look at climate through the lens that's been previously talked about and use a common sense approach when making purchases or future construction planning decisions. And something that isn't being talked about yet is a letter to be drafted to Tim Houston against the estimated installation of 5,000 windmills off of our shores. Modal should be imploring landowners to maintain the best forests and practices they can possibly do to keep our air clean. Instead of taxing the citizens to poverty and continue yearly increases in taxes to fund these useless, pandering green agenda ideas. So it's time to use common sense and to trust the science that our government is or will not include in these predictions. It's time we keep our policies local and remove any outside influence on Modal's decisions.
And
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your concerns you brought forward. If there's any documents from your statements you want to leave with our municipal clerk,
Yep.
they'll be happy to take. We did take some notes, and we'll have the questions also on the recording to bring back to answer to yourself at a future time.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would also like to remind everyone that our public engagement website, engage.modl.ca, has information on any upcoming open houses, workshops, and other events where you can share your thoughts and have your questions answered on various topics. You are always free to contact your district counselor directly with any concerns. Their contact information is available on the municipality's website. Okay. So we'll, continuing on in our agenda, are there any changes? I'm seeing none. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda? Moved by Councillor Moore. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Bell. All those in favor? Motion to approve the agenda is carried unanimously. We do have one set of minutes to approve, June 17th, 2025. Are there any changes, errors, or omissions needed to those minutes? Seeing none, we'll call those minutes approved. We do have a presentation. Oh, I skipped one. Let's go back a second. Is there any business arising from the minutes? There is. Our Deputy CEO, Alex Demerick.
I just wanted to reference that we had numerous speakers during public input. All of the input related to an item that was on the agenda, which was the proposed, excuse me, the issue around uranium exploration and mining. So it was addressed at the meeting, but just wanted to make sure that anyone listening at this point and looking at the minutes could see that there had been public input that was addressed.
Thank you for that update. Now we'll move down to item number 7.1, and we have a presentation from Nova Scotia Community Solar Program. And I would ask that the speakers come forward to the podium and state your name, and you may begin your presentation. It looks like it's getting ready to share there. And I'm just going to make sure our mic is on because I don't know if you're coming through. There we go. Yeah. And feel free to adjust the mic so that it's closer to your mouth for speaking purposes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair, committee members, councilors, staff. Thank you so much for having us here today. My name is Tracy. I'm the Chief Development Officer from the Solar Bank. It's a Canadian solar developer. This is our local partner.
Hello, everyone. I'm Joel McNeil. I'm one of the principals of TriMech Engineering. And I'll tell you about TriMech Engineering later in the slides.
Okay, all right. So it's our honor to be here, propose a very exciting community solar potential projects in Lunenburg, seeking for your municipal support. So I will share with you about the background information about what is this community solar program, what are the companies involved, who's the project owner, where's the financing coming from, and where's the site location, and our considerations about the site design, and also share with you, currently it's still in very early stage of the solar development and what kind of a development cycle, community engagements we have been doing for, and we're seeking for your municipal support. And finally, we'll open the floor for Q&A. So Nova Scotia has identified there's two key challenges in the electricity production sector. So one being high electricity price. On average, citizens, Nova Scotia turns paying 18 cents per kilowatt hour, pretty high. And the other is a high emission in the electricity generation. So currently still around 50% of the electricity generated from the fossil fuel, about 31% coming from coal, the others from the natural gas and the oil. So the province already decided that want to phasing out the coal plants, and they want to shutting down the coal plant by 2030, very aggressive. Where's the electricity come from? So they want the 80% of the electricity coming from the renewables by the 2030, and the 2035 electricity, the generation will achieve the net zero. So very, very aggressive goal. But however, they does have multiple programs make these things happen. They have a rate-based procurement and the green choice programs already grant a contract. So those are for the wind farms connecting to the transmission line, the towers we see for feeding for the provincial infrastructures. The programs we want to propose today is called the Community Solar Program. This is more for solar gardens, feeding for your distribution system where, all the residence, house, office connecting for. And that will allow for the local residents or business who's very interested to use the clean energy, and they don't have to install a solar panels on the rooftop or ground mount. They can conveniently using the solar electricity at a discounted price. So how does that work out? Is the project owner will provide 100% financing to build, own, and operate for solar projects for 25 years. And these solar projects connecting to the Nova Scotia Power, feeding the grid for 25 years. In this role, Nova Scotia Power is the administrator for this the program, how they're working out. The user, the subscribers, whoever, the local residents, business, they want to use the solar electricity, they just need to enter a paper subscriber agreement with the project owner, and they can virtually using the solar electricity produced by the solar farm, and without the need, physically connect to the solar farm. So they will only receive the one bill from Nova Scotia Power, and they receive 2 cents per kilowatt off for each of the solar electricity they subscribe, up to 100% of their usage. There's no incremental fees. There's no commitment. For 25 years, they can terminate anytime, and they still connecting to the Nova Scotia Power as usual. So it's virtually using the solar electricity from your local production on that solar farm. So the program has been launched in March of 2024, up to 100 megawatts of the procurement target. And for the solar garden size is 500 kilowatt to 10 megawatts. And if we got a contract, it's granted by the Minister of the Energy, the contract will be for 25 years. So this is a simple illustration how that working out. A solar garden connecting to the local distribution system and feeding for your local homes, hospitals, schools, even the office here, local business. After installation of these solar projects, the reliability of the electricity supply to local community will be improved because now you have a local generation in this Lunenburg, in this area. So there's a number of the community benefits that just mentioned. As a subscriber, they can use the clean energy without the need to install any of the solar panels. They got the 2 cents per kilowatt off. There's no incremental fees for them. And roughly for today's bill, about 10 to 15% off on their bills from Nova Scotia Power will help the municipality to reduce the emission. And the investments coming from the AI Renewable Fund, which I will share later, is coming from fundraising out of the Nova Scotia and create a local job. It's always our practice, hire for the constructions, laborers, technicians from the local as much as possible because our headquarters office in Toronto. So there's no way, we can fly a crew to here. So we always hire from local, and after commercial operation is a 25 years contract. So we'll hire from the local for operation maintenance for 25-year term. So the owner is currently you see is a number company, and the parent company is AI Renewable. Is a flow-through fund, a Canadian limited partnership, which I will talk more. So just for the project management purpose, it's a number company, 100% own these projects. SolarBank, which where I come from, and also TriMac, we are co-developer. We provide a turnkey service for these projects. So AI Renewable is a flow-through limited partnership headquarter office in Toronto, and they only invest in the clean infrastructure renewable energy projects in Canada to be qualified for flow-through structure, so the investors has a tax benefit. But on the other hand, because of that tax benefit, then they only aiming for a conservative one single-digit return, which allow us to access for the low capital cost. So that's how make the financially feasible for these projects. On the other hand, there's an emotional benefit for them. They also want to be part of the solution for managing the climate change. SolarBank is us. So we established 12 years ago, 2013. At that time, purely for Ontario's fit-in tariff program. So our team have over the time developed, I would say, over 1,000 solar projects. Does have a lot of solar expertise to come into here. About 8 years ago, we also went to the U.S., mainly in the New York County, because they have a community solar program over there. So we have a lot of experience. Also lesson learned learned, working with the local communities, First Nation partners, municipalities, make sure there's a long-term interest aligned with the local community. I'm so happy, all the experience we have learned and we can apply to home country. And this is the first community solar programs in Nova Scotia and also in Canada. So very happy our solar expertise and also experience can, apply to here. So this one is show you a vertical integrated process and how can we make the development cycle, I would say, just simple for municipality, public. So we actually, together with TriMet, managing from very beginning policy analysis and talking to the private landowners, enter the long-term lease agreement with them, and we work with a community solar program, to seeking for the contract from them. After that, we work with Nova Scotia Power for all the interconnection, permitting, compliance. So after that, and the AI Renewable will put the equity, and we assist them to get the financing for the project, and then went to the engineering, design, procurement of the material, construction, and reach the commercial operation. So after commercial operation, we not stop here. We're still here for the long term. It's a 25-year contract with the TriMet. We work on the operation maintenance and asset management. So just for the public municipality, make a simpler solution, because if you have any questions, you doesn't have to talking to the multiple counties. You're just holding us responsible for the solar project. So we're here for the long term. So next I will pass to Joe for TriMet and the site information.
Hello, everyone. So as I mentioned, I'm one of the principals of TriMet Engineering, and we are a Nova Scotia-based engineering firm. We're headquartered in Sydney, Cape Breton. I'm from Glace Bay, and we have an office in Halifax as well. And we are a family-owned firm. On the slides here, the other two principals, my father Blair and my brother Andrew. And we've grown this company since 2015. So 10 years in operation. We now employ 10 engineers and technologists, and we practice in mechanical, electrical, and structural engineering. And so we are the local development partner and engineering partner with SolarBank, working on this project and other community solar projects across Nova Scotia. One of the things we're doing at this stage is we're managing the interconnection processes with Nova Scotia Power. I'm also making sure that we have a good understanding of the regulatory requirements for the community solar program, and I'll be working with the municipality here on this project. So I'll just go to the next slide here. So the project we're proposing in Lunenburg County is in New Germany, in the area of Simpsons Corner. And I'll just draw your attention to the photo on the slide here. This is an actual community solar project completed by SolarBank in New York State. As Tracy mentioned, they have a very similar community solar program there, which SolarBank is participating in. This is a similar size project to what we're proposing in Lunenburg County. This is a 5 megawatt project. The one we're proposing in Simpsons Corner is about 3 megawatts. So it gives you an idea of the size and scale. So on your screen here is our preliminary site plan for this project. It's going to be located just to the south of the 208 highway in the area of Simpsons Corner. And we are proposing this project at 3 megawatts AC. That's enough solar energy to power about 400 average Nova Scotian homes. And by my calculation, that's going to be about 3,000 tons of CO2 equivalent offset from say thermal generation from coal. The parcel is currently unzoned, and the area we're going to develop for the solar farm, on your screen here you can see the rows of panels. The dashed line is the fenced area, and that's about 15 acres. The solid line is the actual property boundary. To the northwest side of the project, you'll notice a little kind of orange and red dotted line. That's the driveway to the project, and the power line extension from the existing three-phase lines at the highway coming in to connect to the main transformers on our site. So a project like this, we would aim to construct in about 4 months. First few weeks of that would be the scheduled equipment deliveries, followed by about 3 months of crews coming to the site. And we'd have electricians, mechanical trades, and laborers. About 30 to 40, I figure, could construct this in a 4-month time period. If I'd say we're on a timeline now. If we meet certain key milestones and approvals with this project, we could be online by this time 2 years from now. So summer 2027 is currently what we're anticipating for this project being online. And I'll go to the next slide. Oh, and I'll pass it back to Tracy.
Okay, thank you, Joe. So this project is still in the very early stage of the project development. We are kind of, assembled together a proposal to the province for their consideration. So the site is a private land. We already entered the long-term lease with the landowners and passed our preliminary, all the desktop analysis. So with Nova Scotia Power, we already confirmed there's a 3 megawatts capacity available with a very reasonable interconnection cost. So currently it's the third one, the blue arrow over here. So we're working on the community engagement. We just want to make sure, the community address their questions and issues they're coming out, went to the community where they welcome the projects and working on the First Nation engagement. And today we're seeking for the municipal support for these projects. I just want to mention this municipal support is not exempt, do not exempt us for any of the compliance permitting, with the government authorities, because electricity generation is highly regulated in Canada, in Nova Scotia as well. So we'll do all the compliance, permitting, zoning, bylaws, and also with the Nova Scotia Power for interconnection and all those ESA, the authorities' requirements. So only about your attitude, like in the early stage, are you positive with this project development? This is more the purpose of this letter. It's one of the mandatory requirements for in the proposal, which I will share with you a little bit later. So after we have all this information, we'll put together a proposal for community solar program for review. Typically take about 45 business for the review and coming back with some Q&As. So roughly take about 4 to 6 months total. And if we are selected, it's the Minister of the Energy will grant us the contracts, and the contract will be for 25 years. And after that, we'll conduct all the engineering in-depth studies, like archaeological study, wildlife study, wetland delineation, geotechnical, like all the engineering in-depth study about the site. And also, the DSIS is with Nova Scotia Power, figure out the interconnection cost, how we interconnect, right, feeding to the grid. So based on all these studies, then we'll start to do the solar design. The one Joe showed us is just a preliminary, site plan. And after in-depth engineering study, the solar design will be ready. We call the IFC, the issue for construction. And based on that, we'll do the procurements, all the materials, and then, handle the construction. Finally, it's the commercial operation. And after that, operate for 25 years. So this slide is a summary about what kind of a requirement is actually required in the proposal. This is a major information. The engagements with all the communities, First Nation, municipal support letter is one of the mandatory requirements to be included in this proposal. And we'll finish all the preliminary assessments for the geotechnical, the species at risk assessment included there. And also about the planning, how are we going to do the financing plan, construction, and also the risk assessment. Of course, the confirmation with the Nova Scotia Power for the preliminary assessment of the capacity, and also we have to show them, hey, what kind of a community benefit, right, we have to bring to this local community. So this is a summary of the public engagement plan. We want to public aware about these projects, provide the information for them to provide the inputs, provide asking any questions they may have. So we send about 60 letters out to the neighbors surrounding this solar site, inviting them to come to the in-person meeting, which held last night. There's about 35 local members attend the meeting. I was very impressed, actually. People take time off, very active, ask a lot of great questions. I'm very happy about that. So end up, I think that the meeting went well. And we have another one about 2 weeks from now, just for online, because some people may not be able to attend in person, so they can still attend online. And also in the letters, we provide the website notification. So over there, anything about the material change of these projects will actually update over there. And we provide the contact information as well, just at the ongoing basis, right? They can send in the inquiries asking for the questions. So the slide, we want to share with you our priority subscriber plans. I think one of the key community benefits about using the solar electricity at a discounted price. So for the design of the community program, actually, whoever is a Nova Scotia Power customer, they can subscribe for this solar electricity, but it's in our plan. But I think, the communities is hosting these solar projects, they should get the priority of the subscribers, right, to this solar electricity. So first priority is going to the surrounding communities hosting this site, and also the marginalized communities, like, low-income housing, senior housing, they should be priority as well. If we still have some excessive electricity available, then we'll kind of expand to the adjacent area. Finally, what I doubt, if still have some electricity available, we'll open to the general public and the business. So that's our plan. So I will say, we think it's a great program, great project in Lunenburg, and will reduce emission, help to manage the climate change, and the local community members will be benefit from that. So we're seeking for your municipal support for this project. I really look forward to work with all of you to make this exciting project happen in Lunenburg. So finally, open floor for Q&A. Thank you so much for your time and consideration. Thank you.
Thank you both, Tracy and Joel, for coming today and sharing this project with us. So we'll turn it over to the floor if there's any questions or comments for our presenters. Councillor Bell.
Thank you. You mentioned that you're looking for our support. Is that support in promoting the project, or are you looking for us to become an investor in the project?
So we're seeking a support letter or resolution, just a support letter resolution, say, you generally support this project. It's a paper letter. There's no requirement for any financial as an investor or other. So it's only a support letter. Like generally, you're positive about this project development in the Lunenburg. So will be included in the proposal.
Councillor Hubley.
Thank you. We meet again.
Yes.
So I just wanted to clarify a little bit of what we talked about last night. There was confusion within the public, and I would just like to make sure that going forward, that we would be notified of any meetings that would be happening in our districts or our municipality.
Right.
And I would like you to clarify that AR Renewable is 100% ownership, and the municipality has no financial interest.
Yes, 100% owned by the AR Renewable, flow-through fund, headquarter office in Toronto, Canadian LP. They will provide 100% financing for the projects. The municipality have no financial interest in these projects. And sorry about notification. Typically, we actually want to open, but somehow, I think we will do the improvements about the notification, and not only the letter. I think we'll also, just post on the social media where the public, right, they're actually looking for the information over there. So I think we want to share the information with the public and the municipality, gaining your input. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Smith.
Have you looked at what class the soil is that you're, of the land that you're leasing? I just ask because there is some, we're mandated to protect agricultural land of class 3. I always get the classes wrong. Alex, is it class 3 or class 4? Class 3. So we're mandated to protect that. And there is some rural potential, agriculture potential land that's marked in our draft planning documents. And I just want to make sure that there's no overlap
Okay.
with your project, because it is on farmland, right?
Right. So yeah, I think the soil is a combination from the database. But when the time we work on the engineering in-depth study, we'll always study about the topographic study is also one of the in-depth study. And once we figure out that it's an organic soil, I will actually typically, we not overlap. Like you mentioned, it's important to protect our agricultural land. We're always thinking about agricultural land. Let's they harvest some for the food, and for the non-agricultural land, right, we can harvest some for the electricity. So yeah, so in case if we want to do some like agrivoltaic testing, we're always actually talking to the planning departments, make sure we got approval for that. And for that small portion, maybe can testing, do some agriculture farming for the food. And plus, right, we having the solar panels over there. So there's one site in Annapolis Valley. That's the only site it's a general development plus it's agriculture zoning. That's the only agriculture zoning we actually take in this community solar development, because that side we also want to testing out. Can we actually do both, right? The solar electricity, plus we can do the agrivoltaic for that is a testing site. So, but we'll get your approval if we want to use a portion of the agricultural land for agrivoltaic purpose. But in general practice, we always, not overlap, avoid agricultural land.
Can I just follow up? And just to confirm, like last night, there were some questions around zoning. And we're not involved financially in this project, but we will be involved with your company as far as working on zoning requirements. It's not zoned right now, but I assume that our plan will be done by the time that you're building. So whatever, zoning is in that area would come into effect. But you made it clear last night that you would be working with the municipality on following any zoning requirements. And some of that will include setback from a wetland.
Yes. Yeah,
the area?
so we have to comply with all the requirements with the municipality, your requirements about the setback to the wetlands, water course. Typically, actually, if you have a 10-meter setback, we actually put more. We put 30 meters is in our, typical, the protocols in the design. And also, we have to got a building permit approved in order to building the solar farm. So we'll comply. The zoning bylaw amendment, I think once you amend, share with us any of the requirements, that's our responsibility to comply.
Councillor Moore.
Thank you. Did you state that you already have a lease agreement with the private landowner?
Yes, yeah, it's a long-term lease agreement with a private landowner.
So what happens if this project does not go forward?
Okay, good question. Yeah, so it's a kind of called a conditional lease. If the project for any reason, right, if we do not get a contract or any in the process, I think any of the in-depth study maybe kill the project as well. So we just have the right to terminate the lease.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Councillor Hubley.
Thank you. This is for Alex or someone. How long is this going to take to come back to us for vote? Because I am in favor of greening the grid, and I want to know when we can expect this on an agenda for a vote.
I don't have an answer for you. Normally, we receive presentations, and then we have some internal meetings following the council meeting, whatever committee it is, so that we can determine which staff are most appropriate and what else is on their plate in order to find out how long it will take for it to come back.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Reinhardt.
Thanks. You said that the goal is to have this online in about 2 years. So I would imagine like the technology is going to change quite a bit in that 2 years. So how is that addressed or dealt with?
So yeah, good question. That's why when the time go to the engineering design, it's after all the study. That's almost from the timeline for the EPC, engineering design, procurement of material, and also the construction, right? So that's after the study. So that way we can be using the advanced technology, suitable for the place. So that's why we are not actually doing all the solar design now, because like you said, any technology could change, then we have to modify the design, right? So that will be the stage at the engineering, that stage. So that is about, for the engineering, procurement, construction, that's around 1 year. So we can use the latest technology.
Is there any other questions or comments? Oh, Councillor Reinhardt, did you have a follow-up?
A new question. In regards to the job creation, I was just wondering if there are any opportunities to work with local organizations, like maybe the local school board, to kind of train some of our local youth to get into the green jobs area.
Yeah, I would say great question. This is also in our proposal. What kind of a community benefit we can bring in? I think just for the limited time, we only mentioned a couple of them, but it's also our intention. We want to train up the Nova Scotia, the capacity for building the solar projects by themselves. So we actually already spoke with the NSCC, the Nova Scotia, the college, and also the CBRM, the Cape Breton University, and also the Halsey University. So we want to offer the internship opportunity, engineering training opportunity for when the time we do the design and also the solar operation and construction time. So that way they can learn. And also the other intention, like hire the local as much as possible, is also have to build up the local, the capacity to build it by themselves. So in the future, yeah, I think solar, a little bit new here, but I think in the future, Nova Scotia will build up its own capacity to do the solar projects by themselves.
Councillor Smith.
Yeah, I just want to second Councillor Reinhardt's comment about involving the local school. And I think what she was suggesting was actually high schools.
Oh, okay.
Not just
Yeah.
post-secondary. And I think, we're in this energy transition, and small communities, rural communities are often the sites of these energy projects. And I would like to see us leaning in a bit more to bringing them on board with the projects. And I was a little disappointed with, the number of people who didn't hear about the session last night. And then, as far as community benefits, like how can we look at that super locally? Because there's a lot of misinformation about climate change out there, a lot of misinformation about renewable energy. And, when a company like yours with this kind of expertise comes in, I would just love to see how our small rural communities could really leverage that at the same time as having the lease agreement and the subscriber benefit of 2 cents off their power bill.
Okay, yeah, so I hear you. I think that's a great idea. We also love to do more. If this is a municipality want to leverage our knowledge, it's also our honor, I would say, help to building up the knowledge for the next generation because they're the future for this society. So I think we can talk to the local high school. If you can provide maybe a list of high school, we can talk to them. We can go there hosting like a the workshop, share with them the solar and put some like a different topics, right? Development or how solar works, some kind of, like a basic solar 101, like a webinars or the workshops going to the place. And after the reach the commercial operation, we can also having the site tour. I think this is, something, it's the honor we can do for the young generations in the school. So maybe give us a list of the high school so we can talk to the teachers over there, what is actually beneficial, right, to the school. Then we can work them together to figure out a few topics, and then we can execute. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that we can make sure you have before you leave today. And I want to, again, thank you again for coming forward and presenting. As our Deputy CEO had stated, we don't make any decisions at this time, but staff will go away with that, and it'll come back at a future meeting. And I'm sure you'll be notified of any decisions that come as a result of that. So
Okay,
thank you.
great.
I think we'll take a quick 10-minute recess right now to allow staff to set up for their presentation, which will come next. And we can also provide that information to you during the break.
Okay,
Okay,
all
thank
right.
you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
All right, welcome back, everybody. We'll continue along in our agenda. We don't have any referrals from committees or council, so that leads us to item number 9, staff reports. The Planning and Development Department, 9.1.1, the Housing Strategy Development, and we have policy analysis with Modal, Jonathan Bertram and Jinwon Wu to present with us today. Welcome.
Hello, thank you for having us. Today we are going to be doing a discussion kind of catching you up to date. Our agenda is we are going to bookend with questions for counselors so that you have something to sort of think about as we're working through the presentation. Then we'll go over some background of how we got to this point and the information we gathered. Then we'll look at defining the issue, identifying some major themes that we are contending with. Then we will turn to a series of case studies to show the kinds of projects that are being done to attempt to solve these, and then have some discussion, and we'll end with the questions again. So to begin, these are the questions we would like council to keep in mind as we go through this. First, how would council define the issue? So what specifically are we looking to do? What are the outcomes that we are actually seeking? What role does council see for the municipality? How engaged do you want to be? What is the appetite for direct involvement? What is the appetite for financial involvement? That sort of a thing. Are there concepts presented today that merit further exploration that you feel we could really dig into and that are of great interest? And finally, are there other potential solutions that we have not dug into that you would like us to look for or that show great promise? So we will start with the background.
Yeah, next we'll start with some background to ground our discussion, including the range of housing types we are working with. First, we looked at the structure of housing ownership. We started by distinguishing between different forms of ownership and rental structures. Small-scale rental refers to housing owned by individual landlords or small business, usually just 1 to 3 units. These landlords are often hands-on, directly manage tenant relationships and maintenance. In contrast, large-scale rental, including REITs, is more corporate. These often involve apartment complexes or multi-unit developments owned and managed professionally. Units might be owned by national companies rather than local landlords. Home ownership means the person owns and lives in their own home. It's the most common housing type in MODL. About 90% of households fall into this category. Lastly, condos are units where individuals own their specific space but share common areas, and a condo corporation manages the building. Next, we broke down the types of affordable housing. Subsidized private housing model has 2 forms. The tenant-based rent supplement helps low-income tenants afford private rentals. They pay part of the rent, typically 30% of their income, and the rest is covered by a subsidy. The developer-based rent supplement offers incentives to private developers, such as grants or tax breaks, in exchange for providing below-market rental units for a fixed term. Subsidized public housing is owned and operated by government agencies. Rent is geared to income, meaning eligible tenants pay below-market rent based on what they can afford. Nonprofit housing is typically owned or operated by charities or housing associations. The key feature is that there is no profit motive. The goal is to provide homes to low-income households. Co-ops are housing communities where residents are shareholders. They live in units managed by a board of residents and participate in decisions collectively. CMHC, the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, defines housing as affordable if it costs less than 30% of before-tax household income. This definition applies not only to rental housing, but also to ownership and co-op units. The term deeply affordable refers to housing rented at least 40% below the average market rent. Market rate housing includes units that are not subsidized. Tenants pay the full market price, and these properties don't receive government support. Lastly, we explored some non-traditional housing models and emerging trends. RVs are mobile units equipped with basic amenities, but most municipalities don't allow them for permanent residence. Modular housing is prefabricated off-site and then assembled on location, offering flexibility and faster construction. Tiny homes are usually less than 37 square meters as defined by Nova Scotia regulations. They are compact, often mobile, and provide a low-cost solution to housing shortages. Co-housing is another interesting model. Individual private units are combined with shared amenities like dining rooms, workshops, and gardens. And finally, green housing initiatives aim to improve sustainability and energy efficiency. They often include upgrades like heat pumps and better windows to reduce energy bills and environmental impact. Each model of affordable housing comes with benefits and trade-offs. Tenant-based subsidies are quicker to deploy and tap into the existing private rental supply, but they don't create new housing and aren't sustainable long-term, especially in tight markets. Developer-based subsidies help increase the actual supply of affordable units, but affordability is usually limited to a fixed term, like 15 to 20 years, and success depends on developer interest. Subsidized public is good for long-term affordability and allows local control. The downside is limited supply. It's expensive to build and repair, and many units are aging. It also depends on funding from higher levels of government. The rental of nonprofit housing is stable and usually just enough to cover costs. Over time, these homes continue to serve local families and build community value. But the issue is also limited supply. These projects are often small, depend on government grants, and may lack the technical skills to expand quickly. Co-op models build strong community engagement and a sense of responsibility. Since there's no profit goal, rents are low and stay low over time. However, it needs a community with enough interest and capacity to manage things well. Co-ops also take a long time to set up and need funding and expertise to succeed. Nova Scotia's housing strategy revolves around three major goals and policy priorities. First, the province aims to expand housing supply and improve affordability. This responds to rising demand and ensures that more residents have access to affordable homes. This includes growing and preserving affordable housing stock. Second, the strategy emphasizes targeted support for people most in need. That means maintaining existing public and social housing for low-income families and supporting marginalized communities, such as seniors, persons with disabilities, Indigenous residents, and African Nova Scotian communities. Third, the province is committed to sustainable and inclusive growth. It promotes mixed income, mixed use developments, and encourages energy-efficient building design. Nova Scotia has several key programs to support these priorities. The first one is the Nova Scotia Priorities Housing Initiative. This program uses funding from the National Housing Strategy to create more than 200 new affordable units, developed in partnership with private and nonprofit organizations. These homes will remain below market rent for at least 15 years. Next, the Canada Community Housing Initiative, co-funded with CMHC, focuses on maintaining and renewing Nova Scotia's over 11,000 unit stock of public, nonprofit, and co-op housing. Lastly, the Canada-Nova Scotia Targeted Housing Benefit is a portable rent supplement that follows tenants, helping vulnerable housing hooks to relocate to safer housing. This benefit has already reached over 10,000 households. In 2024, a specialized stream for survivors of gender-based violence was introduced. It provides up to 2 years of rent support to help individuals and families secure safe housing. Beyond the main programs, Nova Scotia has launched several additional initiatives to close housing gaps. The Land for Housing initiative identifies surplus provincial land and offers it to developers. The Housing for Healthcare Workers program, launched in 2023, supports recruitment and retention by repurposing buildings into housing for health professionals. The first project, in partnership with the Housing Trust of Nova Scotia, converted a former motel into 10 to 12 one-bedroom units and 6 townhouses. The secondary and backyard field incentive program encourages homeowners to build small rental units on their properties, like basement apartments or garden suites. The Indigenous and African Nova Scotian Housing Initiative invested $3.5 million to support off-reserve Indigenous homeowners.
So to end our background section, it's also worth noting that there are identified gaps in the information we are working with. The first one I'll bring up is the concern with the 2023 Municipal Housing Needs Assessment. There are some concerns about the data and how accurate it might be. So there are two main points in this. One is that modal staff is conducting a market study, and that is expected to be done by fall, but of course we don't have it yet. And the second is that the 2026 census will be very important to build the strategy moving forward, because it will be the first census that is occurring fully within the post-COVID world. So the last census was 2021, sort of just as COVID was taking effect and ramping up. So the 2026 census will be crucial for understanding where we are now, because a lot has changed since then. Second, the federal strategy is changing. This is due to the recent election primarily, and there are many new, revised, promised, but not yet put in place programs. And as those are settled, they will change the relevant ecosystem for some of these organizations. And then finally, housing in the rural context is far less studied. A lot of study around housing and affordable housing and housing development occurs in an urban context. And the ones that do focus on rurality tend to treat rurality like a monolith. So it is important to acknowledge that not all rural areas are going to be like other rural areas, and there is a need to have specific programs that are applied to specific areas, just to make sure that any program or initiative we undertake is going to have the effect we hope it does. So now we will move to defining the issue, and for this purpose we have broken down 5 major themes that keep coming up, and so we'll discuss a little bit of those in kind. The first theme is just a general lack of supply. This is common throughout all of Nova Scotia and much of Canada as well. Most municipal plans before COVID were anticipating stable or slightly increasing, slightly decreasing populations, and there was not the expectation of rapid growth. So there are general issues with the cost of owning, renting, and building houses. There were, in some cases, low vacancy rates before the rental market became strained. And building new housing is a generally slow process. This is starting to catch up, but housing is not the sort of thing that can be built in a single year en masse, so there is time needed to adjust to that. Second is that weak rental supply has consequences for both renters and owners. And crucially, a lot of those effects are hidden, meaning that folks are living in precarious, unsuitable, unfit housing. They are not where they would want to be. They are living somewhere where they can technically afford but are not comfortably living. They put more people in smaller rooms, multifamily living in unsuitable houses potentially. There are a lot of these issues that are hidden by just the data around rental. And then finally, as these shortages are continued, the effects they have get worse and they entrench themselves. So the farther along the road we are, the harder they are to reverse. Second theme is that there is a need for diversity of housing options. It's not enough to just build one kind of home. Modal, as we mentioned, has high home ownership, around 90%, and the remaining 10% is renting, and that's as of 2021. And while ownership is generally good for people, If there is a lack of rental options, it can cause other problems. This is especially true for an area like Modal with an interest in seasonal laborers, in tourism, which is very dependent on a rental market being available for workers and folks to move here. Second is that there are changing and aging demographics. There is a stronger need now for aging in place, which has a focus on accessibility, community support systems, municipal services. And it was identified by one of our interviewees that the vast majority of our housing stock was built for young working families who are expanding, who are anticipating settling down, having kids. This is just what our current stock was built for, and that is no longer the context in which we are using it. So there is a need to change the kinds of housing that we're building. And finally, we will mention that housing suitability is a greater concern when moving is difficult. This falls into the sort of folks living in unsuitable housing, where perhaps they're not served very well by the housing they're living in, but moving is such a risk or such a cost that they will stay in those locations even though it is not correct for them, and that sort of locks up the whole system. The third theme we will talk about is affordability and financialization. Financialization is a highly technical term, and there's a lot of information we could get into, but as an overview, it is characterized by a market dominance of purely financial interests, and that's either owners or developers. So domestic and international examples show that if a market is characterized by strong financialization, it tends to steer development towards certain things. The general trends are a preference for condoism or renterism. That's simply a very high percentage of condos or renters in a market. And it tends to split into two preferred development types. One is very dense urban areas, which are effective uses of capital, and then the sort of idyllic vacation home kind development, where you have large, separated, remote, very high value sort of estates. And those two are the kinds of development that highly financialized markets trend towards developing. Now, Modal has a variety of both urban and rural areas, and the necessary and appropriate development for each of those areas is going to be different, and it is going to be different what we consider appropriate and affordable. The development that occurs in Cookeville will have to be different from the development that occurs in Petite Rivière, which will have to be different than the kinds of development we are doing in Walden. These are, a variety of areas which require different plans and different approaches. So true affordability requires that there is low-cost housing available in the forms that people need, in the areas that they want. The goal is to create a market so that folks can choose where to live based on the suitability of where to live, rather than the necessity of where they can find something. The fourth theme we are identifying is general issues facing non-market housing. There is a small but growing community of developers, especially in Nova Scotia. We have identified that Nova Scotia is sort of a hotbed for nonprofit initiatives right now, and there's a lot of interest in co-op development. But if you do not have a long history of developing these things, it can be difficult to build that momentum. So there are limited financing, generally inexperienced boards. We're doing interviews with a few people who have identified ways of getting around that, but that will be coming when we do the full presentation. Second is that a high-cost environment makes affordability more difficult. Offering affordable units becomes more difficult as things are more expensive, and we are currently in a very high-cost environment. So it is difficult for development to snowball into other developments, and sustainability becomes an issue. Pre-development costs are currently substantial barriers, especially for nonprofits, as there is a lot of work that needs to be done before a unit is built, and certain programs only target certain sections of that development process. So there is a good need to sort of harmonize the incentives and programs offered by various levels of government. And this leads into the last point, that there is a common concern that there is poor coordination between government agencies about what funding is available, what it targets, at what point it's attainable, whether you have to be in certain stages of the process to access certain things. And so there are various concerns around a lack of coordination.
The literature we reviewed also highlights two issues in rural communities. First, short-term rentals are reducing the availability of long-term housing in rural areas. Platforms like Airbnb have grown faster in rural areas than in cities. This shift removes units from the long-term rental market, making it even harder for local residents to find affordable places to live. Second, rural homelessness is driven by a combination of housing scarcity, social stigma, and lack of services. Many small communities have very few affordable rentals, long wait lists, and limited public services. On top of that, the social dynamics in small towns can create reputational barriers, especially for people experiencing poverty, addiction, or housing instability. Without public transit or local shelters, people are left with few pathways to stable housing, which increases the risk of long-term homelessness. Looking at the current landscape, as of June 2025, there were 238 short-term rentals in Nova Scotia, accounting for 826 rooms. In MODL, rural housing insecurity is very real. A recent report showed that 723 people sought help across the region, and more than a quarter were from MODL alone. Now that we've defined the issue, we turn to potential solutions, including what's being tried in other places and what might be adaptable here.
So, as we begin this, it's important to note the jurisdiction we're working within. Responsibility for housing is primarily a provincial responsibility, but it is also split between each level of government. At the federal level, there is a lot of big picture strategies. There's the national strategy, CMHC is a federal agency, and they offer a lot of financial support through various programs. The province has the most direct impact and authority, developing the housing strategy, housing programs, the affordable housing strategy, the general land use framework that municipalities interpret or build upon, and then they manage any public housing we do have. And then finally, the municipal level, there are regulations which influence how development occurs. There's the actual development approval process, and then there are other impacts that may have an effect but are not directly regulating, like setting property taxes or area rate levies, that kind of thing. So there is some influence there as well. But we will say that the provincial government does hold the most authority and responsibility, and they wield the most direct influence in housing development.
One key set of insights comes from Professor Rand Thomas' work on nonprofit housing. One of the biggest takeaways is that local coordination and alignment with provincial programs are crucial. When local efforts align with provincial priorities, communities are more likely to receive funding and support. Another lesson is the value of regional housing committees. These committees help municipalities and nonprofits share knowledge, identify common challenges, and align their responses across jurisdictions, which improves program delivery in rural areas. Lastly, we see a wide range of approaches, from directly building housing to designating nonprofits and forming partnerships. In many cases, nonprofits are not just service providers, they are acting as developers, but their success depends heavily on local capacity, staff stability, and technical skills, as well as ongoing collaboration with partners.
So as we began this project, one of the first things we did was a jurisdictional scan of all of Nova Scotia's municipalities, but across Canada as well, and some international examples. And here we would like to outline some of the big picture takeaways we came across. The first and most important thing is that there are more similarities than the differences. There are a lot of municipalities that are in a very similar position to us, and this is especially true for other rural municipalities. The outcomes desired in general are increased stock and increased variety. The approaches they have taken are generally reducing barriers to the permitting process, waiving fees, especially for simple applications, and then a catalog and divestment of municipal land made available for developers to use at a reduced or functionally no cost. And then the difficulties most folks are seeing are the sudden population increase, a general aging of demographics, low vacancy rates prior to rental strain, and a lack of immediate construction capacity. And this is one that is also very common in rural context, where a lot of the development got focused on larger urban centers. For the current modal actions, we would like to highlight a few that show that we are already sort of on the way towards addressing some of these. There are a lot of collaboration with the towns. There's the Municipal Joint Services Board, water and wastewater service sharing agreements, extending transit networks, and regional growth committees, all of which are looking to increase that collaboration and make sure that there are not artificial barriers to development or growth within the region. There's also supports for development. We are already using municipal land and making it available for housing. We are working with developers for higher density projects and looking at new ways that development can occur. And then there is the current large-scale municipal-wide land use planning, which is going to go a long way into clarifying the way forward and making it very clear for developers or interested parties what they can do where and how to go about that.
Before we dive into the individual case studies, we would like to show how they connect to the 5 themes we introduced earlier. Along the top, you'll see the 5 themes: lack of supply, diversity of housing options, affordability and financialization, challenges in non-market housing, and finally, short-term rentals and rural homelessness. Each row lists a specific case study that we'll be covering soon. Some of these, like the ANF housing strategy or the Lawrence Street project, touch on multiple themes at once. Others, such as the 12 Neighbors tiny homes in New Brunswick or the rent-to-own program in Bahamas, are more focused, aligning with just 1 or 2 themes. So before we move forward, take a look at these connections. They'll help you to see how each example fits into the bigger picture.
All right, the first one we are going to cover is the African Nova Scotian Housing Strategy. And we would like to begin with this because it is the biggest picture, holistic approach to this kind of a problem. It was developed by the Nova Scotia Black Community Housing Council as a response to the 2021 Nova Scotia Provincial Housing Report. So it is intending to be a focused take at the entire picture. It is characterized by 4 big moves, and each of these have a number of action items associated with them, trying to achieve those goals. So the big moves are the community bank and incubator. This is an attempt to centralize finances and make it available so that communities can create more direct change in their own communities. The second is the community land trust. This is looking to make the information available in one space to be able to more accurately see what resources a community has, what land they have, what buildings they have, community resources, those sorts of things. The third is the Housing Development Toolkit. This is aimed at developers themselves and making that development easier, making education available for potential developers, improving the quality of existing developers, making the process of development more accessible, more clear, and creating networks for developers to rely upon. And then finally, the Housing Hub, which is dedicated to people and helping folks find the housing they need. So instead of targeting the development, it is targeting the people who are looking for housing and helping them find what they need. The 3 takeaway items that we identified from this are, first, to consolidate resources into one point of access. In many areas across our studies, we are finding a frustration when resources or programs or processes are split into multiple points of contact and folks don't know which one is the authoritative one, or they find frustration in trying to meet all of them at the same time. So if you can consolidate those, that makes the entire process easier, more accessible, and more likely to be used. The second is it is important to facilitate and educate about the development process. Another frustration is it's hard to get started, and a lot of folks want to get started, but they don't know where to start or how to start. So it is useful to make that available to them and put them in connection with folks who are already doing development work, and that creates a, in general, higher quality all across the board. And third, focus on improving quality. A big takeaway we are finding is that there are a lot of folks already interested in doing this kind of work, so it is important to improve the general quality, make it easier, give them more resources to be able to improve what they are doing rather than trying to create the action ourselves. The next case study is the Lawrence Street project. This is up in the region of Queens. It tackles a few different themes and it has multiple stages. Currently there are 30 units in construction and they plan to do 100 to ambitiously 150 within 5 years. It is including 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units with a focus on accessibility, energy efficiency, high quality of housing. And for the municipal support, they were given municipal land leased for $1. The municipality provided rezoning for those lots that it was going to be on. And they provided $203,000 in pre-development funding. And that is all of the development that happens before you put shovels in ground. And at that point, more robust programs like the CMHC Cooperative Housing Development Program, then they kick in and they help during the actual construction process.
The Capital Regional District Rural Housing Program in British Columbia is a pilot program running from 2025 to 2026 for Salt Spring Island and the Southern Gulf Islands. One key feature is the ADU incentive program. It gives homeowners up to $40,000, covering half of the cost to build a small unit, like a secondary suite. In return, owners must keep the rent affordable for 5 years. The rent must follow provincial income limits, even if the tenants change. The unit can't be rented to family or used as a short-term or non-residential rental, and the grant is given after the unit is finished. The program includes a navigator program too. The CRD will hire a dedicated housing coordinator for the full 2-year pilot. This person will manage the pilot funds, help with zoning, permits, and applications, and support local builders, residents, and nonprofits. The goal is to make rural housing easier to plan and deliver. To put BC's program into context, we've compiled it with Nova Scotia's secondary and backyard suite incentive. Both of the programs offer similar financial support, but BC's program has stricter rules, including a 5-year non-market rent requirement and a ban on renting to family. Nova Scotia, on the other hand, allows rentals to low-income tenants or for family caregiving and doesn't regulate rent in the same way. BC also includes a program coordinator, while Nova Scotia does not provide navigation support.
The next case study is the Affordable Housing Development Navigator Program, as run by the Public Good Society of Dartmouth. This is highly targeted to development supports, and I would say it's a good case study in, if you know your acronyms, the SMART acronym, the specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound. This is a very targeted effort. It ran for 1 year and was targeting specifically the Dartmouth North community. They contracted one part-time development manager from an existing firm to facilitate, and it intended to bring together all relevant developers, folks who are interested in developing or folks who are already in development or already owning developments, and put them in the same room together, gave them resources, workshops of how to navigate the process, how to prepare pitches, how to deliver proposals, specialized information about navigating bylaws, and connected them all together, giving them a network to rely upon for future questions. It ran for 1 year and then it achieved its goals, presumably. We are looking to reach out to them and hopefully discuss to see what the tangible outcomes of that were, what the sorts of developments, which ones of them actually went through, was it successful. But the folks involved did at the time report that it was a very helpful process.
Street Area at Home Housing Association in Nova Scotia is a new non-profit organization in southeastern Cape Breton. It was jointly created by the Street Area Chamber of Commerce, Richmond County, and the town of Port Hawkesbury. Like CRD's program, this association also focuses on rural housing challenges outside urban boundaries. The main focus is a community-led housing expansion initiative. It started in Port Hawkesbury but has now expanded to Richmond County. It aims to bring the business community into housing solutions and get private sector involvement. It's based on multi-stakeholder coordination. It brings together elected officials, government staff, developers, and community members. The 12 Neighbors Tiny Homes project is a non-profit community designed to provide housing and wraparound support services. The initiative began in 2021 with a total investment of $13 million. Its mission is to achieve lasting transformation in reducing poverty and homelessness. The project plans to build 99 modular tiny homes, and as of 2024, more than 96 units have already been completed. Each unit ranges from 200 to 250 square feet and includes a full kitchen, bathroom, living room, and bedroom. Rent is kept affordable, set at 30% of the tenant's income, and the homes are subsidized by the Department of Social Development. All tenant referrals come from the New Brunswick housing waiting list, ensuring that the program reaches those most in need. 12 Neighbors also delivers on-site services such as addiction recovery, education, and skills training. It even offers employment opportunities within the community itself. For example, a cafe that provides job experience and income pathways for residents. This program shows how small modular units can be combined with social supports to address housing and homelessness in a sustainable way. The final case study looks at a government-led rent-to-own initiative in the Bahamas called A Place to Call Home. It was launched in October 2022 by the Department of Housing. The program is designed to offer a financially accessible path to home ownership for working and self-employed people. The model allows tenants to live in the home first under a fixed occupancy agreement lasting up to 36 months. One key feature of this program is that part of each rent payment is converted into a credit towards the home purchase. It means that a portion of the rent is directly counted towards the buyer's future down payment. Tenants are gradually building ownership while they live in the home. This pilot includes 50 homes in 2- and 3-bedroom models, and participants must also complete a mandatory home ownership empowerment course, which includes financial education on budgeting, savings, and planning. For comparison, Canada currently does not have a nationally coordinated government-led rent-to-own program. Most rent-to-own arrangements are private, and many don't include affordability requirements or financial education components.
So, this has been a lot of information. We are very aware of that. The case studies, we hope, gives you a glimpse into how these kinds of considerations translate into programs. And so to end it off, we would like to re-show the questions and hopefully have some discussion about what of this interests you and where we would like to go next.
Thank you. As Jonathan had stated, there's no motion coming out of this at this time. It's a chance to see what has been compiled and put together and have a discussion about housing. So I'll turn it over to the floor for questions, comments. Councillor Oigel.
It was a lot of information, a lot of information. I'm glad that you did look at the 12, can't remember, all of a sudden, right. Because I did have a tour of that facility in that area. And it was, the homes are very small, but unbelievably, lots of room inside. Like, just the way that they laid them out. And they are also looking at, I believe, building them as income and selling them to other people outside their particular community as well, which they're planning to do as well. Yeah, I just wanted to say it's a lot of information, and I'm not really sure I can even really answer those two questions at this time.
Councillor Smith and then Councillor Hughley.
Yeah, thank you so much for that presentation. It's really great to know where you're at right now and how you're progressing. And a housing strategy was something that I really felt strongly about coming into council, and it's a big, it's like, it's getting bigger all the time in my mind, because as you know, we have an area that has diverse needs, we have diverse housing needs, and we're a municipality, and how are we going to tackle that? I guess I have some questions about the strategy itself and what the outcomes will be. Maybe I'll just list my 4 questions, and then if there's any feedback on that, if you know where we're at right now, that would be helpful. First of all, my concern is around rural, deep rural data around housing. How are we getting to that kind of knowledge that exists in communities, because it's so underrepresented in data overall, and that's a large part of modal. I'm wondering if we're looking at the strategy having a plan and targets for actually how many units do we want to build over the next 10 years? Is that something that we're looking at? And then following from that, will there be a framework for monitoring and evaluating our progress? A big question for me is will we have a framework coming out of this for how we're making decisions around land, surplus land, and I can go into that more later. Maybe other people have questions around land. And at the end of this, are we going to have, a strategy with some vision that really allows us to be proactive rather than just responding to people as they come to us? And I think that that's the goal. And I'm hoping that we can get to a place where we're really this is what we're doing, these are our targets, and these are the paths that we're taking to get there. I don't know, sorry, that wasn't those weren't clear questions, but I'm just trying to visualize what is our strategy going to look like by the end of this.
Right. I guess I'll cover the first question first about deep rural. That is one of our identified issues. As you say, it's very difficult to do something that you don't have data with. So we are specifically looking for initiatives that have worked or could work in especially deep rural areas. And the sort of risk and benefit of that is that small changes can make a large impact in deep rural, but that also means that small setbacks can have large consequences. So that is something we're actively looking in, and it is one of the major focuses of what we're doing moving forward. Maybe to speak to the framework.
Yep. So we have council's awarded a contract to get some market data. which should help improve some of the quality of our data, although we know that we will still have issues with likely some of that sort of deeper rural homelessness questions. There's a bit of data coming out around homelessness counts from Acadia University that our staff are following up on that will also help. In terms of targets, the answer is a maybe. Some of it depends on direction. So part of the reason why we're presenting the information today is to get some input from council on what direction you're looking for. If your primary focus is just around, for example, the first theme that was identified around lack of supply, that's largely going to be addressed through the private sector, if that's how you define your problem. So creating outcomes for the municipality there is not reasonable, because it's something that you can influence but you cannot control. If you have more targets around addressing issues for non-market housing groups that want to come forward, that's something that we could work into that, if that's the direction that council wants to go. If council wants to become much more directly involved, then you could also set targets, for example, for how many units you'd support. Now, you have to acknowledge the funding situation, which is we don't have Housing Accelerator money, which is where that support has generally come from, where municipalities are directly involving themselves. The case study that we have from Queens showing the, what's the name of that project?
The Lawrence Street project.
Thank you very much. Is a really interesting example for council to consider, because the bulk of the funding for those units and the long-term construction funding is coming from federal and provincial sources. But in the case study interviews that our policy analysts did, it became very clear that that project would not have succeeded without the support of the municipality and what they call the pre-development planning. So the $200,000 or so allowed them to do a bunch of design work and preparatory work so that they could apply for that money. So you could have a strategy that focuses on catalyzing existing groups that are there, and you could have some measurables around that. And that might be a more appropriate role for a municipality that doesn't have federal provincial funding in order to be a direct player, but can be more of a navigator connector. So the answer is we can have some targets, but we wouldn't recommend them unless we have direct control over them.
Councillor Hubley.
This question here, an appetite for direct involvement, I would really need someone to elaborate on what our direct involvement would be, because I'm not feeling that we should be landlords. I would like, I would really like to explore what that could mean, because some parts of it make me uncomfortable.
Well, that's what we're here for. So right. At the very end of one extreme would be, yes, you're getting involved, you're becoming a landlord, which we don't think that that's, just from the discussions that we've heard and the presentations that have come forward and how council has responded, it doesn't seem like that's the direction that this council is looking for. And so a less direct involvement could be anywhere along the spectrum of case studies that you've seen, for example, acting as a catalyst for groups that are coming forward, or creating programs that might assist with pre-development for non-market, policy around surplus land. You have a whole suite of options that don't involve you actually becoming a non-profit housing provider. So we're looking, it's a question to council.
I understand that, yeah. Okay, let me think.
On to that, something I made note of is the CRD Rural Housing Program in BC. It was interesting to see that with that case study, they had a coordinator working with 13 municipalities and we have problems trying to get 6 to come to the table with initiatives. It's not always the case, but I did flag that because each municipality is facing these challenges. And their approach was to say, we're going to hire a dedicated housing coordinator to kind of bring everything together. So that one, to me, was the one that kind of stood out. And if we could get all 6 units on board, that would be a win for all municipalities as well as residents and folks moving here. And I think when you're moving to the area, and I'm speaking of a doctor actually I spoke to on the weekend, they're not specifying a certain town or municipality. They're coming to the South Shore, they're coming to Lunenburg County. So sharing those resources might be something that we could do if there was appetite for that. I have Councillor Oikel and then Councillor Burns.
So I'm thinking back to when I was campaigning this past election, and quite a few people out in the rural area, one of their big issues was that, you know, they had this big home that they raised their family in, their family's now gone, they're aging, and they would like to move, sell their home to another family, but they would like to move to a smaller home, and there wasn't a market, there isn't a place for that, right? And not necessarily have lots of land, but, you know, enough land to, you know, to do a little gardening, a little something on it. And I'm wondering whether or not part of our strategy could possibly be to find out exactly what our residents' needs are, right? Like, what do they want? What are they looking for housing? Right? Like, I realize that there's a lot of new people moving into our area, and so apartment buildings and family homes. There was recently a home sold in Wildville that a generational family is moving into. You know, so there are homes that people need, big homes, right? Big homes. So I'm thinking that that's one of the ways in which council can be involved in finding out from our residents what we need for, as Deputy Mayor mentioned, for the whole municipality, because some people might want to move to town, some people might want to stay out in the rural area. And then we can encourage developers, or at least let developers know, well, this is what our residents, this is what our municipality is looking for. Who out there wants to fill that role, right? That's an area that I think, especially the smaller homes for our aging population. Thank you.
Councillor Burns, then Councillor Bell.
Thank you. I'm going to try and answer the first 2 questions there. Some of what I'm about to say I think has already been alluded to, but for me, defining the issue, I really think when you talk about housing, there's a spectrum, and there's 2 issues that I'm particularly interested in. One would be housing for those that might not have the same means as the middle class. I don't know how to word that any kinder, but there are people who need help getting into housing, and on that is its own spectrum, but I think primarily the answer to that is non-market housing. I think we've seen that time and time again. So out of a strategy, I'd like to see some outcomes from minds who are better attuned or smarter or more engaged with this topic than I may be at that end of the spectrum. I think recommendations on how the municipality could be supportive of that without owning the assets, or if we were to own the assets, where is the funding coming from other level of government, or should we be advocating to other levels of government to build and own the assets if they have things like a Housing Nova Scotia Corporation province. So I think that is one thing I'd like to see out of the strategy, is how is it that we can best plug into that end of the spectrum, not on just an ad hoc basis, but on a methodical and well thought out way to try and encourage that. The second part B of this, if there was enough parts to that, part B was what I would look at as more middle class housing, and that's probably where I'm more engaged in just because of my other job, but that's where I see a lot of folks buying in. But I do think the answer to that is not rest with us as supportive in the way we are in non-marketing, but in permissive. How is it that we are gatekeeping the private market and developers who are going to increase supply or build the supply that people are looking for. And so for me, in that comes down to what is it that we're looking for with subdivision bylaws, and do they match up with the development agreements, and should it be where you can road bylaw kicks in with 2 lots with a subdivision bylaw, but for bare land condo developments it's 5, you know? How is it that we align some of our regulations to make it straightforward, easy to interact with, and economical for developers to get it, especially those small scale developments, right? I think that's probably the key in the answer, especially to those who are looking to transfer their land on to someone else, and people who are looking to buy into what is predominantly a rural community, not a larger subdivision. So it's a little bit of ramble, but those are kind of how I define it and where I'd like to see, where I expect to see, would be happy to, if I'm wrong, to see it otherwise, but it would expect that you would see recommendations on the 2 ends of that spectrum. How are we supporting or promoting the private market in a reasonable, publicly protected way, but how is it we're methodically and purposefully supporting non-market housing? And I think that answers what role do I see for council in this, and that one of them is, how is it we're setting this up for success and hands-off? And how is it that we're hands-on to support something, and what resources and plans would we need to rely on or bring in order to do that? Does that give you the kind of direction you're looking for? Yeah.
We're seeing head nods. Councillor Bell.
Thank you. What outcomes will be successful? Obviously, we would like to see housing be accommodated in our communities. It is identified that it is a need. However, I also realize that at the municipal level, it's not part of the Municipal Government Act that we provide housing. I do see us having a role as being a junior partner, trying to help the other 2 levels of government achieve what they would like to do. I think that that in itself is a role for us. If we have lands that are available, that we own, that we can make available to developers at a very reasonable cost, that's the way we can assist. I did mention before, when one developer was suggesting that we could become a partner by subsidizing units at about $40,000 apiece, I have 0 interest in using municipal dollars to subsidize someone else's mortgage. That I don't see that as our role. I do, however, see a role, as I mentioned earlier, or if there's a developer that wants to put in a group of houses, possibly we could help with road construction or see that it's built to a standard that will accommodate them for their housing development without that being a direct cost to them as the developers. That would be a way that we could help. I also feel that if we can give staff time to work with some of these developers to see how we can accommodate their ideas, I'm quite acceptable to that. But I just am ever mindful of what our responsibilities are directly under the Act, and I want to make sure that we accommodate those first. I see this as an extra that we can provide, and I'm willing to provide, but at a limited role. Thank you.
Is there anybody else that hasn't spoke yet before we go around to second speakers? Councillor Reinhardt.
Thanks. I echo a lot of the sentiments around the table, especially Councillor Burns putting, energy into really where people need housing, and then kind of the level of involvement sort of being suited to the need of housing. So I don't have a lot to add, just that I hope that this strategy can not just look at building housing in a vacuum, but considering like community building, yeah, because there's a community around whatever housing goes up. So I'd be interested in learning more about the NORC model, the naturally occurring retirement communities. I believe Ontario is looking at some of those. We have a lot of seniors who I know someone mentioned they are looking to downsize from larger homes, but they don't have anywhere to go. They don't necessarily want to relocate to town. So some creative solutions around that, but yeah.
Councillor Oikle. Councillor Smith.
Yeah, just a few like really concrete things that I'm thinking about. I think top line, I would love if we were to become a really cooperative, housing-friendly jurisdiction. And I would love to see how we could get there. We have such a strong history of cooperative housing in Nova Scotia with the anti-Ganesh movement. And I think there's still a lot of expertise, not still, but in growing expertise around us with cooperative housing. And I think it might be a model that is really, we could really work with in this area, because it's not like, I mean, you can do it at a large scale, but you can also do it at a small scale. And so I was really excited to see the project that you brought forward from Queens. That is really exciting. And just to, say, I think, how Councillor Burns put it is really where my mind is at, heavy on the nonprofit cooperative, models. And then how do we kind of, deal with some of those issues that we're getting out of the way of private developers. What I mentioned about land earlier, I would love us to have a policy of some kind that was very clear about when are we divesting of land, like when are we selling it, when are we leasing it, and when are we acquiring it. I don't feel like I have real clarity on where we're at with that. Home sharing wasn't in the list of the provincial initiatives that you mentioned, probably because Happy Pad has been jettisoned. But I just want to note that the South Shore Housing Action Coalition has done some work on this, and they have put together, a package on this. And I just wonder if there's something that can be pulled from the fire on the Happy Pad disaster, because we do have so many homes out there where people have empty bedrooms and they need help around the house. And I'm just wondering if we can look into, was it a failure of the platform itself, or is it a bad idea? I hope that we also consider efficiency programming within our strategy, because I think that, although that program has not been serving as many people as we liked, as we would like, the fact is that people are in core housing need, and the efficiency programming can address some of that. And then the one last thing I'll say, or maybe two, sorry, in my rural area, I'm seeing a real movement towards self-build, especially with Gen Z. And that is one of those kind of deep rural things that I think that's happening, that I would love for us to somehow access what is happening and how do we support it. And is it about like providing pre-approved housing plans that they can access, and that would that help them in their building? Would it help them build faster? I have lots of questions around that. And also RVs. Like, I think we just have to accept that people are living in RVs, and what should we be doing as a municipality to support that happening safely, both for people's health and also for the environment. Yeah, and the last thing was just around CBRM recently announced something about a land bank. And I think that's interesting. Like, we've acquired some properties recently, I think, or maybe my memory's not great on this, but I think what CBRM is doing is looking at like tax sales and how can they purchase properties that then they can kind of earmark for nonprofit, cooperative housing, that kind of thing. So I know we already do that for conservation. I don't know how kind of focused our effort is on that with housing. Anyway, sorry that was a long list, but those are things I've been thinking about.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you. It was one part that I forgot to mention while I was talking last time. I also heard the concern last October about individuals living in larger homes that are now a widower or a widow, and they were saying, I've got this big house, but I really only live in 2.5 rooms. But I can't sell it knowing that I can buy something smaller, even though if I sold it, I would probably get enough money, but there are none available. So they were asking me, what would be the idea of me sharing my house? I don't want to go to a nursing home. I want to stay in my own house, but I would welcome a younger family coming to live here. How can I put a second entrance in? How can I put a sliding door between me and them so they have their privacy and I have mine? This suggesting that a program to help them revise their house to accommodate a younger family who may make payments towards the widower's upkeep to avoid them going into a provincial housing or special housing, and use it maybe towards the down payment of the house itself. So if there's a program or something we can do to help there, I would see that as a role for us. The other concept that I have seen has been done in several places, and I think you mentioned one, is a community of tiny homes, which I think could help a lot of people get started, or for seniors that want to downsize, assuming that the sleeping accommodations is not a loft, which is in a lot of the tiny home plans. But if it could be on the same level, I'm sure that there would be seniors who would love to get rid of their big house to go into a small, new type of thing that maybe had shared central sewage or something. If we can make it attractive for the older population who still wants their independence, I think we could free up a fair number of houses for younger families. So just a consideration.
On to your comment about a large home and an owner wanting to open their home to a family, kind of being that reference point, because they obviously don't want to have a nightmare tenant. So screening that process or finding some way to make that easier for them in the end might be something to think about. Councillor Burns and then Reinhardt.
One point I just think I probably want to clarify or really hammer home as well is I don't see it as a failure when we are saying we don't want to duplicate the wheel. I do know that there's an army of people working for the province right now trying to get stuff out the door to help people, even just as simple as upgrades to current homes to make them a bit more livable for seniors, especially those who don't want to leave their home. They want to stay, but they might need help like a different bathtub to get in, or there might be, like, there's solutions to an existing home that will allow them to stay there at the time. So as we're looking at different issues here, and I do a lot of these through my other job, folks who would have a lower income and would otherwise be looking at selling the home to get into a different facility, basically zero interest loans and grants to get in. And there's a lot of folks, I think, that don't know about that, how to access it and everything else. So I don't think that it would be wrong for us in our study or in our strategy to say, hey, these are things that already exist, and rather than duplicate the wheels, here's a way that others are connecting people into them in a way that's actually working, not just us saying we're connecting people. And it's not a failure, and it's not a throwing the province under the bus. I think it's actually helping their program if we are saying this already exists and works, and we are directing people into that provincial avenue that might not otherwise go.
Councillor Reinhardt.
At the last NSFM conference, we had a presentation from the Nova Scotia Cooperative Council. I don't know if anyone else was there, on converting municipal buildings into housing. So I don't know if you came across that in your research. They're doing some really inspiring and incredible projects in other parts of the province. So I'd just be interested in learning more about that as well.
Anyone else that I might have missed? Not seeing any. Well, I think you got some feedback to start on to move along to the next step. Is there any final thoughts from your end before we conclude? I'm seeing none. So I think you have your direction you need.
Yeah, no, this has been wonderful. Thank you very
great.
much.
All right, thank you. There is no mayor's, deputy mayor's, councillor matters to bring forward, no added items, no in camera today. Therefore, we will call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.